Hi, and welcome back to the Shane Plays Out of the Abyss Notes series, where I give my thoughts, notes, impressions, tips, etc. on running Out of the Abyss, which is the 5th edition D&D Underdark adventure. And I run a group of folks through this as the DM at my friendly local game store. So this series, if you're not familiar with it, I just kind of, hey, here's how, I ran the adventure. Here's some tips on running the adventure. Occasionally we get into just D&D DM or GM thoughts, and rules clarifications and that sort of thing. So if you're a new viewer, hope you enjoy it and come along for the ride. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much. This consistently is a well viewed video series, as a consistent viewership and comments and that sort of thing. So speaking of comments, this week is kind of light, but I'll put on my +3 spectacles of viewer feedback and we'll see what we got here. So let's see what we got. First of all, David Schmidt said, "Hey Shane, thanks for the series. I've been following for about 6 months." Thanks, David. Appreciate it. And it's been helpful with playing Out of the Abyss. I've also ended up using some of the locations for other adventures, notably Mantol-Derith in my Storm King's Thunder campaign. King Bruenor summoned the party to discuss the giant problem, and the faction reps were all reps they had met before. Some were even enemies of the party. So, we covered Mantol-Derith in a previous set of recent videos, and there's some faction reps from different factions like the Emerald Enclave and Order of the Gauntlet and the Zhentarim and Harpers and that sort of thing. So that's what he's referring to. So that's pretty cool. So basically David's saying that he used this kind of as a source book to bring Mantol-Derith and King Bruenor and all that into Storm King's Thunder, which that's pretty cool. Very imaginative and creative. And, even though this is an adventure, there is some source book type stuff in here for the different areas and cities and races and things of the Underdark. So nothing says you can't do that. Rob Plummer, who is a frequent commenter, said, "My players don't split the party as they're old school. However, I would probably allow it and then make them see what happens when you go off on your own. It probably wouldn't end well for the player." So Rob is referring to last session, and the reason I wasn't too hard on the players or didn't make things too crazy for splitting the party was because I kind of accidentally encouraged it. And if you want to know more, go watch the previous video. I don't want to, recap it here for the people that have already seen it. But, and then I kind of went off on a mini rant about splitting the party. Like, look, there's nothing that says you can't. D&D is an open-ended and, imaginative game where everybody comes together and tells the story. At the same time, and I'm down on metagaming, but in this case, I'm like, let's metagame a little bit. If you're a player and you decide you want to split the party, has the DM prepared for that? Or is the DM telling a story that assumes that you all stay together? Is your character or what you want to do so important that it's worth, forking things, and now the DM has to keep up with the main storyline and then also yours? I'm not saying don't. In fact, there may be times where it makes sense. I'm just saying, be respectful of both the DM and your other party members before you just unilaterally decide, well, I'm going to go this way. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying you can't. I mean, D&D is an open-ended game. But that's the one time I kind of encourage metagaming. It's like, let me think about the overall social compact we have going on here at the table, the unwritten agreement, or maybe even written agreement. I don't know. Some groups are different, before I decide, hey, I'm just going to kind of go this way. And as a DM, I'm kind of trying to land on a couple different ways here, how to handle it. Now, this past time, I was pretty patient and even kind of protective of the players that left because I kind of encouraged it accidentally. But in general, I would either allow the characters to possibly get themselves in trouble. There is strength in numbers. It is a fantasy game with enemies and bad things. Or B, I may just kind of start going, okay, well, you went that way, and I'll get to you when it makes sense. And that could result in players just sitting at the table for the whole session doing nothing, except me occasionally going, I'll get to you, or this is kind of what's going on with you, and then going back, because there's nothing that says I, as a DM, have to cater to that person who went off on their own and suddenly pause everybody else and go take care of them. I don't want to be a jerk about it, but at the same time, I also don't want to disrupt, what's already been prepared and laid out. And, 99% of the time, even though D&D is an open, or any role-playing game is an open-ended game, your DM or GM has laid out what he hopes or she hopes and expects to happen, and has prepared for that to give the best story that evening, and to be as prepared as possible. So again, it's a very fine line to walk between saying, D&D is only limited by your imagination, which would say I can split the party whenever I want. But then on the other side, realizing that this is reality, and there are limitations to what a DM or a group can handle at any given time. And so I feel like I've mini ranted or mini lectured or whatever, pontificated for 2 videos on this in a row. Bottom line is, if you feel as a player that you need to split the party, nothing that says you can't, but just don't expect the DM to be a vending machine that you just press buttons and get what you want right then at that moment. So we'll leave it at that. So Rob is saying, if his players who normally don't, because they're old school and they know that, one of the cardinal rules of D&D is don't split the party. And by the way, let me say, I have been that player before, and I've seen that the DMs have had to go, and literally have protected me from consequences and stuff like that. So I'm lecturing to myself here, as well as just kind of saying in general. But yeah, Rob's saying it probably wouldn't end well for the player. If you're in a dungeon crawl, if you're in the Underdark or whatever, and you just go scooting off on your own, yeah, we'll see what happens. So that's it for viewer feedback for this time around, and we'll get into, kind of what happened on the last session. So let me take off my +3 spectacles of viewer feedback. I also want to share with you that this video is brought to you by my love of Waffle House. Not by Waffle House, although I would sure love to have them as a sponsor, because I love Waffle House. I love sponsors, but it's my love of Waffle House. And by the way, don't order, if you don't know, if you've never been to Waffle House, you poor thing, don't order waffles at Waffle House. They've got all kinds of delicious breakfast food and other food. I always get the ham and cheese omelet, double plate, ham and cheese omelet plate, which means it comes with hash browns, and double order of hash browns. Sometimes I get Bert's delicious chili on my hash browns, and sometimes I get them like scattered, smothered, peppered, diced, chunked, all that. But it's hard to go wrong at Waffle House. I want you smothered, want you covered like my Waffle House hash browns. Okay, that tangent, that unexpected tangent, brought to you by my love of Waffle House. So let's get back to kind of recounting what happened last session. So when we last left our players at the end of last session, they had entered Mantol-Derith proper, which is sort of the trading post, kind of a secret trading post in the Underdark, where 4 factions, the zhentarim, the Duergar, the Grey Dwarves, the svirfneblin, the Deep Gnomes, and the drow, all kind of have an uneasy alliance, a peace, if you will, as they trade together. And when they first show up, there's carnage, and they see, enlarged Grey Dwarves chasing some svirfneblin that are kind of blurry, and there's, carnage. So something's obviously gone horribly, terribly wrong. And this is out of the abyss, which means that madness is spreading. So, and it's related to a demon lord that is literally inside a gem, and this gem is changing hands inside of Mantol-Derith, and it's causing all kinds of stuff, bad stuff. So on the plus side, this is an opportunity for once everything's said and done, if everything goes right, the players actually have a chance to get rid of a demon lord and send it back to the abyss without actually confronting and having to fight a demon lord. So, and we'll get more into that maybe in this video, but probably definitely the next one as we talk about this gem. The gem has not made an appearance to the players until the very, very end of the session. They see the gem. Up to then, they've just seen the craziness that's going on, that touching this gem that literally has the essence or whatever of a demon lord in has caused. But there's my cat. Hello, kitty. That's Buster. So, so anyway, that is what had happened. You know, and last video, they killed like 16 Duergar, enlarged Grey Dwarves, by becoming kind of involved with the svirfneblin, and kind of helping the svirfneblin, who are obviously, you know, these enraged Duergar are chasing around. And by the way, they're not just upset. I mean, they're like enraged, furious, because they've accused one of the deep gnomes, Yantha Coaxrock, of stealing the gem, which she did. But she's not going to admit it, and that's led to an escalating series of events that are being kind of fueled by the madness, where the Duergar want to wipe out the deep gnomes, just period. So anyway, at the end of last session, the players had literally just defeated a lot of Duergar, and they were standing in front of the stone doors that lead into the deep gnome enclave. And in Mantol-Derith, there's 4 enclaves at kind of like northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, kind of at diagonal points of the compass around Mantol-Derith. There's these enclaves where each faction has like their warehouse and their living quarters and things like that. So they just happen to be right in front of the svirfneblin enclave, because they defeated some Grey Dwarves that were trying to beat down the doors of the enclave to get in and kill more svirfneblin. So, so let's go to the svirfneblin enclave here. Oh, one thing I want to mention. Last time I forgot to touch on an NPC that the players can encounter. I decided, for really time purposes, and because I just didn't think that this NPC's story was that essential or interesting enough to add in to Mantol-Derith, because there's already a lot of stuff going on. There's this NPC called Peebles, and Peebles is a deep gnome, and when the players are saving the first 2 deep gnomes that are being chased by the enlarged Duergar, or if they're kind of searching around the market area that's been ransacked and destroyed on the east side of Mantol-Derith, I believe that's where the Duergar and the svirfneblin do their trading. They can find a svirfneblin who's kind of hiding in plain sight under the wreckage of a Zirkwood stall. And the Peebles, he's on page 137, and he works for a beholder who likes to get eye stalks from other beholders and kind of graft them onto himself. And he doesn't get the powers of those eye stalks, but I guess he gets the eye stalk. And he works for this beholder is called Zazax the Eyemonger. So if they encounter Peebles, if you choose to use them, it's possible that that they could go on kind of like a little side adventure and meet Zazax the Eyemonger, but I decided not to. But however, I just want to make sure you're aware of that. So on page 137, and then they also talk about a possible side adventure with Peebles and Zazax the Eyemonger on page 142. So I forgot to mention that last episode. Now, so the svirfneblin enclave, warehouse, if you will, is in the north. I'm sure I'll put a map up on the video, but it's in the northeast, and to the southeast are the Duergar. But right when they ended last time, they were standing in front of these closed stone doors. And I realized as I was playing with my players and getting them, moving forward, I had no idea how they were supposed to get the doors open or to signal the svirfneblin inside that all was well and you could open these doors. So I just kind of ad-libbed it. And I just said that, they're the two deep gnomes that were with them. One of them is charmed and another one isn't. They used the Rod of Rulership last session and charmed one of the deep gnomes along with a enlarged duergar. New special knocks to kind of, knock and signal, everything's okay and all of that. So I just kind of ad-libbed that. You probably, it's probably a detail that's not even that important. You could probably just say, oh, the door opens and somebody looks out. But, I mean, you can, kind of do it however you want. Another thing that happened immediately after the fight and before the players went into the svirfneblin enclave, I did not see this coming. And it plays also later into the session that we had. They were like, well, do we keep talking to the deep gnomes or do we go to the zhentarim? Because, I kind of, the zhentarim guides that are with them, I kind of use them in a way last session that really has a couple of players saying, but we need to get to the zhentarim enclave as soon as possible, which, you would assume the way the story's written and the way, I'm planning it that, oh, you see what's going on with the duergar and the svirfneblin, and then you help the svirfneblin and you find out that your friend Yantha Coaxrock has been kidnapped by the duergar, so you go save her, But about half my group was wanting, we got to go to the zhentarim because, I'd mentioned that there's kind of important meeting that's going to happen, all this. So I did this to myself, but there was some discussion of what to do. They finally ended up saying, well, let's see what's going on with the deep gnomes. And, they knocked on the door and all that, or, had the secret knock and the deep gnomes were yelling, hey, it's us, let us in. So the door opens and I'll read you kind of what's going on with this svirfneblin enclave. It says 22 deep gnomes, including Gabble Dripskillet, and Gabble Dripskillet is the lead negotiator for the deep gnome faction. They're holed up in this chamber, which is shaped like a cube. The ceiling is 100 feet high, and the walls are lined with niches that serve as residences and storage spaces. Levitating crystal platforms throughout the warehouse allow the deep gnomes to reach these compartments. Each crystal platform can move up, down, or side to side on command, but only the deep gnomes know the command words to activate them. Most of the svirfneblin have retreated to their residential niches. Gabble Dripskillet is the only one at floor level, and she's prepared to negotiate with whoever or whatever breaks through the doors. If the characters deal with the duergar, Gabble is grateful and offers them a reward, which I'll make a note because I made the reward different. Gabble doesn't know what provoked the duergar in attacking her enclave, but she is friends with Yantha Coaxrock and would like to see the svirfneblin mage return safely. Now it says treasure. It says stored throughout the warehouse are 60 10-pound sacks of salt worth 5 gold piece each, 30 sacks of precious minerals worth 25 gold piece each, 24 quartz gemstones worth 50 gold pieces each, a dozen amethysts worth 100 gold pieces each, and 6 paradots worth 500 gold pieces. So that's, I guess, their trading stock that they have in at the moment. Halfway up the southeast wall is a hidden compartment. Finding it requires a successful DC 19 wisdom perception check. The compartment contains 1d4 magic items determined on table C in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And then Gabble keeps a crystal coffer in her niche. The coffer is worth 100 gold pieces, and it contains a black sapphire pendant on a silver chain worth 5,000 gold pieces. She offers the pendant as a reward to the party for saving her enclave. Now, I decided that I would give them a different reward from Gabble. One, because, I mean, that's 5,000 gold pieces. That's a lot. And I don't know. I just felt like I'd rather give them magical items. So what I did was I rolled randomly on table C in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I gave them 2 magical items out of the ones that were stored in that little secret thing, and they got a potion of heroism and a decanter of endless water, I think, which in retrospect I probably shouldn't have given them that one because they were already like, oh, we can use this as a fire hose to hose people down, and and it came into play later this very session. So Sometimes on the spot DM decisions can come back to haunt you, as any DM out there most likely knows. So basically, they come in, the deep gnomes tell, Gabble and they saved us and they killed the Duergar, blah, 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 blah. And it comes out pretty quickly that these are the same adventurers and heroes from Blending Stone. Because when Yantha Coastrock's name comes up, they're like, Yantha, we know Yantha. Because Yantha was the leader of the Stoneheart Enclave, the Stoneheart Enclave, something like that. It's kind of an offshoot of the Emerald Enclave at Blending Stone. So the players are like, we know Yantha. And, it kind of comes out. So, everyone's like, oh, these are the heroes of Blending Stone. They saved Blending Stone. So not only do they, have the adulation or whatever of saving the deep gnomes at that moment from the Duergar, but hey, these are the people that, saved us at Blending Stone, the Battle of Blending Stone. So that was kind of interesting. And the story about Yantha comes out. She's been kidnapped by the Duergar. They don't even know if she's alive. They've accused her of stealing some kind of gem, which Gabble's like, I don't understand what this gem thing is about. And so they're like, wow, I guess, and Gabble's like, I hate to prevail upon you, but would you mind rescuing my friend Yantha? And the players are like, yeah, we'll do that. We'll definitely look into that. And that's kind of how it went. And the zhentarim I kind of played because there's a couple of zhentarim representatives with the party. So here's the zhentarim inside the warehouse and enclave of another faction in Mantol-Derith, and so they're looking around and making mental notes. And, Gabble is like, she's looking at him like, I know you're in here and I expect you to use discretion and all that. But it's incredibly unexpected and spontaneous and very bad circumstances. So the zhentarim were allowed to come in with the group because, if they got left outside, they might get killed or something. So, and they were with the party that just saved everybody. So that was kind of an interesting wrinkle that I don't know if you'll need to deal with as part of your adventure as it unfolds or not. But that's basically what's going on with the svirfneblin. The svirfneblin, are basically just like being attacked by the Duergar. They want to survive, and they would like Yantha back, and that's basically what's going on with the svirfneblin. Now, in my mind, in my preparing for this session, I assumed that, we got to go save Yantha. So they would go over to the Grey Dwarves and save Yantha. Right? Wrong. Wrong. You would be wrong if you thought that. Now, luckily, I had also studied up in a couple of times and prepped for the zhentarim and drow encounter, but I wasn't as mentally ready to run that as I was for the Duergar part, which they haven't done yet. So we're not going to go into the Duergar enclave tonight. Suffice it to say, Yantha is there, and yeah, she will die sooner or later. And the Duergar are frothing, insanely, murderously angry at the Grey Dwarves. I mean, the Deep Gnomes. That's what's going on. And because they're like, they stole a gem, which Yantha did steal the gem. But this gem is not just a standard gem. Like I said, it has the essence of a demon lord in it, which I'll probably get into next video because they haven't actually really gotten into this gem yet. But suffice it to say, it's out there causing havoc. Anybody who touches it has to make a saving throw, I think like a pretty high DC, like wisdom saving throw, where you get an indefinite madness immediately. So this thing is just causing havoc in Mantol-Derith. Now, I expected them to go to the Duergar, and, they all talked, and I'm like, oh, please go to the Duergar. Please go to the Duergar. This is what I'm ready to run. And they're like, we'll go to Yantha. We'll get to Yantha, but we really need to get to the zhentarim enclave in this meeting. And I'm like, oh no. So, but I didn't say, no, you can't do that. And luckily I had prepared somewhat. So that's what they went off to do. And, I'm kind of toying with the idea of having Yantha be murdered because they waited. Because by the book, like right now, as all this is going on, the two main Grey Dwarves or whatever involved in her kidnapping and that are accusing her, like the leader of the Grey Dwarves and then the merchant that she stole the gem from, are like literally like they have her tied up with a dress or a gown that's covered with jewels, and they're lowering her down towards a Zorn, and a Zorn eats jewels, so as it eats the jewels, I assume it will kill her. And so it's almost like a, the old Batman show from the 60s. It's like a cliffhanger death trap. And I'm toying with the idea of, since you chose to go to the Zhentarim and not save Yantha, I'm toying, I don't know if I'm going to do this, but I'm toying the idea of having Yantha be dead. And that being the case. But I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if that's a jerk move or if that's a good narrative move because it's time sensitive, or to just reinforce the point with the players that, your choices do have actions. You knew for a fact that Yantha was in trouble, but yet you wanted to go, to a meeting, which for all you knew was just a meeting and not trouble, right? So I don't know. I'd really welcome your comments on that, what you would do in that case. But anyway, so they went to the Zhentarim, which the Zhentarim Enclave is, I think, it is to the southwest. It is the sort of the southwest corner of Mantol-Derith. And I took this opportunity as the party was walking through and, going crossing bridges. And I took this opportunity to read the intro text of section 3 on 136 again, on page 136, to remind them of Mantol-Derith, because Mantol-Derith is actually kind of pretty, and there's some cool descriptive text in here. So, I read it. I think it's like the third time I've read it to them, just because I want to get into their head, what Mantol-Derith is like. They also, as they were still on the eastern side, with all the ransacked, smashed up tents and merchant stalls and all that, they did a little bit of searching. They found some gems, which by the book, there's some gems that can be found if you search all that stuff. Let's see, East Marketplace. Characters who search the marketplace. This is on page 137. Find a total of 2d6 50 gold piece gems scattered about. And when, I told the players, I said, you found some gems. They seem kind of like, well, is there anything interesting about the gems? And I was like, not that you're aware of. And I don't even think they kept them. So I think they were more looking for clues rather than loot. Anyway, so they kind of went towards the Zhentarim Enclave. And basically the way the Zhentarim Enclave works is every enclave also has a kind of a fungal grove in front of it. And then you get to the enclave itself, which is usually some double doors or something, big doors, stone doors, and then you go inside the enclave or the warehouse or whatever. The Zhentarim found great profits in Mantol-Derith by bringing in products impossible to obtain in the Underdark. Items as innocuous as sugar and fresh spices are treasures in high demand here. The surface dwellers trade mostly in raw materials, including wood, fine fabrics, and leathers, but also maintain stocks of perfumes, alcoholic beverages, confectionery, paper, and clothing made by surface artisans with surface materials. The human Gazrum Dulak leads the Zhentarim Enclave in Mantol-Derith, and this is the person they're looking for that King Bruiner told them to find because he knows where he has a key. It's actually a ring that can get you to the library at Graven Hollow, which is the whole point of coming to Mantol-Derith, to find out how to get to Graven Hollow, to hopefully get some information from this stone giant library at Graven Hollow on what the heck is going on in the Underdark. King Bruiner is just kind of hoping that, that all that knowledge there, maybe something there could help. So the Zhentarim traders cut down most of the fungi grove outside the entrance of their warehouse, keeping only a few small gardens for decoration. And they have a huge pavilion and several smaller tents. Water dripping from the ceiling runs off the tents to form puddles everywhere. The pavilion is where Gazrum Dulak conducts business, while the smaller tents are set aside for 15 Black Network, which is Zhentarim merchants and their human commoners. Now, there's a ledge overlooking the pavilion that has a gargoyle. And this gargoyle has actually been touched by the madness of the gem. And it's actually the demon lord that's in the gem is svirfneblin. And so the gargoyle has been touched by madness and is in love with a drow assassin that is going to make this meeting go south very quickly. Inside the pavilion are 4 drow. There's Sirac Mazalor is a female drow mage and the chief negotiator for the drow. There's 2 female drow elite warriors, and there's a female drow assassin posing as another elite warrior. The assassin is Kenyal Drugir, and she actually has this gem, svirfneblin, on her person. And, you know, and she's mad. She's gone mad. And she thinks that her job, she in her madness, she believes she's been hired to assassinate a zhentarim beholder. And this beholder is here with the zhentarim, and he's in charge of the warehouse. And his name is Lorthun. But he's kind of scarred up and maimed, and he's only got 4 of his eye stalks because he got into a fight with a behir. And so he's scarred up and he lost some of his eye stalks. But he kind of runs the warehouse, and Gazram Dulak is the chief negotiator, and evidently they fight like an old married couple, according to the book. Now, what's going to happen is that Gazram and the Beholder and I think 8 drow thugs, or not drow, but zhentarim thugs, are going to come out to have a meeting with the drow. The point of the meeting with the drow is they're like, should we form an alliance to wipe out, to take advantage of the craziness going on and wipe out the zhentarim, or not the zhentarim, the grey dwarves and the deep gnomes? Which, if there wasn't madness going on, doesn't make any sense, because the whole point of Mantol-Derith is to trade and make money. But anyway, it's the Underdark, and it's madness, and it's D&D. So this can go a couple of different ways. Okay, one is the players can just go into the pavilion before the zhentarim show up and try to talk to the drow. The drow will be like, get out of here. And if the players don't leave, a fight will start. Okay? Or if they hang back and kind of watch, eventually the zhentarim will show up with the beholder and all that. And during the negotiations, the assassin who's mad and has the gem on her will suddenly attack the beholder, and then all heck breaks loose. The second scenario is what happened with my party, and I wanted that to unfold. So what I had was, first of all, the party, you know, everyone's got pretty high passive perceptions, and I think that gargoyle, yeah, it says if you have a passive perception of 13 or higher, you spot the gargoyle just kind of hanging out. And a lot of the party did. But I made a point and said, he doesn't seem hostile. He's just kind of hanging out and kind of looking down at the pavilion. And you know, the zhentarim told him, well, over at the drow enclave, there's gargoyles that kind of protect the entrance to the warehouse. So seeing a gargoyle wasn't completely crazy, but, you know, I made the point of saying he's just kind of watching. You know, he doesn't seem hostile or whatever, but it's obviously he's a gargoyle. He's not just some statue or something like that. So by the book, it says, you know, if you just kind of hang back and watch, you'll see the zhentarim show up, and then the fight will break out and all this stuff. So what I kind of had happen was Gorath, who's their zhentarim guide, and one other zhentarim has been with them. Remember, the rest of the expedition is still outside of Mantol-Derith, was like, something doesn't quite feel right here. Let's just kind of watch and see what's going on. Which was a completely contrived thing on my behalf, just to get the players to kind of hold up. And if the players had said, no, we want to go talk to Drow, of course I would have let them, but this was kind of a gentle, hey, you know, and they were like, okay, so they watched. And, you know, I kept having Gorath go, you know, there's just, I can't put my finger on it, but something's just not right. So he could, like, his intuition was telling him something's not right, but he didn't know what it is. And also there's all this food set out that the zhentarim have set out for the drow, but the drow are being really rude and not eating it. They're like, we're not eating that, because they're arrogant and jerks and all that. It reminds me of that episode of Enterprise where Captain Archer invites some Vulcans over to his ship and has his chef prepare Vulcan food. And he's like, please eat. And they're like, no, we're okay. Very rude. Because, it's like, well, your food's not good enough for us and all of that. So anyway, little aside. So what I had happen was the zhentarim show up with the beholder, and everyone's like, oh, a beholder, because they're not expecting that. The zhentarim show up, and the meeting kind of starting, and then Gorath's like, I guess let's go. So they go up there, and Gorath introduces, the party to Gazrum, who's the lead zhentarim, and said these are the people we've been tasked to bring to you. And Gazrum's like, okay, I thank you. I'm glad you're here, but it's kind of interesting timing. I need to kind of talk with the drow here. And he assures the drow, he's like, this is just kind of unexpected timing. This is some customers of ours. This isn't, some weirdness to try to, as a negotiating tactic or intimidate. This is just unexpected. And the drow are like, whatever. So I said it becomes very apparent that they're not even, beating around the bush. The drow are proposing an alliance to wipe out the svirfneblin and the deep gnomes, and the grey dwarves, svirfneblin and the grey dwarves, deep gnomes and the duergar, if you will. And just suddenly out of the blue, the assassin's like, blah, 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 and shouts in Elvish, for the honor of House, what is it? Drew Gear. And she just runs up and attacks and hits. And I think I even did an attack roll and hit the beholder. And everyone's like, oh, and what's going on is she's kind of dishonored and has been pushed out of her house. And she's deluded into thinking that she's been hired to kill this beholder. And if she does it, she can earn her way back into her house. Because the drow houses is very important and all this stuff to them. So at this point, all heck breaks loose, and it's kind of a burly brawl to DM. So what I did with this fight, because you got all the players, I think 7 or 8. I think I have 7 players, 7 or 8. Anyway, I got all my party. I've got the zhentarim leader. I've got a beholder. I've got 8 zhentarim thugs, and then I've got a drow mage, 2 elite drow warriors, and a drow assassin. And so it's kind of a 3-way fight. So what I did is I even told my players before we went into this, I said, we're going to have to, this is combat, and we're going to have to narrate it. And what I had intended to do was each round just narrate the fact that, well, these drow dropped these zhentarim, and these zhentarim have done this to the drow, and then what are you doing, and da-da-da, and kind of halfway do it, so that way it didn't take 2 or 3 hours to resolve this whole thing. And what I also had happen, and I did this because I was trying to get rid of the zhentarim thugs, all 8 of those, quickly and get them off the board, was I decided, because of the tension of what's going on in Mantol-Derith at the moment, and the uneasy we're talking with the zhentarim, and the madness that's in the Underdark, I decided to have that when the drow assassin, who's posing as an elite warrior with this group, run up and attack the beholder, I had that just trigger the drow leader to it just triggered her fight or flight. She decided to fight, and she decided to attack the zhentarim. For whatever reason, she interpreted all this as craziness of the zhentarim and betrayal. And she was like, what is this betrayal? And my player's like, what? And I'm like, it's just imagine there's all this tension and it just snapped, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's what she's decided to do. So she cast Cloud Kill on the zhentarim. And the reason I did that is because next round, or at the beginning of the zhentarim's turns, I was just going to have those 8 zhentarim thugs be gone, because the Cloud Kill got rid of them. But my players, they had pretty high initiative over the drow mage. They hit her 2 or 3 times trying to make her lose concentration, and they did. So the Cloud Kill went down, so I still had the zhentarim to deal with. But long story short, we had 2 or 3 rounds of fighting. Like I said, I kind of half narrated it, half did a combat. I let the players have agency and do what they wanted to do. The the decanter of endless water came into it, spouting water at the drow. My monks, or a couple of my players, their monks were getting in there and trying to get the attacking drow off of the beholder. And to the credit of my party, they've got it very much in their head by now that there's madness in the Underdark and it's causing craziness. So they're trying to find a non-lethal solution to this fight. They're like, stop this madness. They're trying to do non-lethal damage. They're trying to grapple and pull the assassin off of the beholder, just all this different stuff. And I'll give them credit for that. It was pretty cool to see them, try to do non-lethal and try to approach it that way and try to find a somewhat peaceful solution to what's happened, this whole meeting going crazy. But suffice it to say, the beholder paralyzed a couple of people, including the assassin, with his eye stalk. Now, the beholder is missing 4 of his eye stalks. One is, he's missing like Death Ray, Disintegrate, the really big baddies of the beholder. Let's see. Yeah, he no longer has a sleep, petrification, disintegration, or death rays, and his adjusted challenge rating is 9. So the beholder is just, this drow hit me with a sword, and this drow is mine. So like, no matter what the party was doing, the drow's like, he's mine. And the party was trying to persuade a couple of times. And anyway, there's a big long fight. The cloud kill got, the concentration on the drow dropped. So the cloud kill went away and messed up my attempt to kind of get some pieces off the board very quickly. And then, the zhentarim thugs ganged up on one of the drow warriors, and the party was fighting the drow mage and another drow warrior. 1 or 2 of the party members was trying to handle the assassin, and the beholder's trying to kill the assassin. And I kind of had Gazrum Dulak, who's the zhentarim main dude. I think he's a noble by statistics. Let's see what he is. Pretty sure that, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's a noble. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, Gazrum Dulak is a human noble, so he uses noble statistics. I just had him kind of step back, and he's watching everything and trying to make sense. Not being a coward, but just, he's not going to get involved till he has a better understanding of what's going on. So he's looking around, and he's kind of watching and analyzing, and trying to watch this whole thing and figure out what the heck is going on. Eventually, I think around the second or third round of combat, one of my players, it may have been the bard, who has a high persuasion, I can't remember, did a persuasion on Gazrum Dulak and said, this is crazy. We have to end this. And by the way, can you keep the beholder from, because by this point, it's obvious the beholder has paralyzed not only the drow assassin who stabbed him, but also one of the players who's trying to, get the drow assassin away from the beholder. They've both been paralyzed, and the beholder's like, open its mouth really, and it's going to eat the that stabbed him. It's very clear. And so one of the players convinces the zhentarim lead Gazrum Dulak, like, look, this is crazy. We've got to stop this. And by the way, can you keep your beholder friend from eating that drow so we can find out what the heck is going on? And it did a good persuasion roll. I think I assigned it a fairly high DC. Now, they tried to persuade the drow mage, but I think I gave that like a DC 20 and it failed. But I can't remember what. Maybe I got a 10 or a 15 for Gazrum Dulak, the zhentarim guy, because he's not really wanting to fight. He's trying to figure out what the heck's going on, and everything's crazy. So, but anyway, they persuaded him. So he convinces the beholder. He's like, "Can you wait to eat that drow until we find out what's going on?" And the beholder's like, "Oh, very well." And that's kind of where things ended. And the player who had kind of grabbed the assassin at one point and pulled him back, and then got paralyzed for their troubles, and here come the beholder again, noticed that when the assassin kind of fell to the ground because they were pulling him, a gem fell out of like kind of the waistband or the belt or whatever of the assassin. And also during this, when it was obvious that the drow assassin was in trouble, the gargoyle comes flying in and goes, "My love," or what is it? I think he says "my love." No, what is it? Yeah, he flies in and says like "my love" or something like that, and it was quickly dispatched by the players because he's attacking the players because the players are grabbing the assassin and all this stuff, and the gargoyle died pretty quickly. But he was like, "My love," trying to rescue the assassin. So anyway, so it was fun, but it was hard for me to do as a DM. And like I said, I wasn't as prepared. So always be prepared for your party to go in a direction you don't expect. Expect the unexpected. I was like, oh, okay, I'll do it. But wasn't what I was expecting to go on. I wasn't as prepared as I was for the Duergar, but I think it still went okay. Yeah, the gargoyle, I got a note here. He said, "My beloved." And, he tried to rescue her and grabbed her and was flying off with her and just got hammered for his troubles. And again, like I said, I kind of half narrated and half combated this fight. And then, the gem spilled out. So next session, hopefully we'll get more into this gem and I will give more details, but suffice it to say for now that it's got that Demon Lord's essence inside the gem, and it is the key. Even though there's madness in general in the Underdark, it's the key to the madness that's happening in the Underdark, or in Mantol-Derith. Another thing I want to point out is the drow mage and one of the elite warriors was subdued, but not killed. Another drow elite warrior was just hammered into death by the zhentarim thugs, just surrounded her and killed her. And then the assassin is currently paralyzed by the beholder as well as one of the players. So that's where things ended, and we'll pick up there next time on the Shane Plays Out of the Abyss Notes series. Thanks so much for watching. I welcome your questions and your comments. And a thumbs up on the YouTube video and a comment helps me out tremendously. But regardless, thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel. We will catch you next time on Shane Plays.